answer session, which will be coming up fairly soon. I want to get back to, you said that your reaction to 9/11 was that of a journalist. Let me find out what happened, what really happened here. Let's talk about a bit more about what you found out about the events of 9/11 and the terrorism campaign against the United States that had preceded that.
It began with, or it began much earlier in Afghanistan when we funded these guerrilla fighters that were helping the guerrilla fighters in Afghanistan fight the Russians without really knowing that the people we were bringing in from Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries were very anti-American, and that their plan, and they were even called Al-Qaeda, they called themselves Al-Qaeda way back then, and their plan was as soon as they were finished with the Russians, they were going to come to the United States. And they had an open invitation from the United States because, from what I understand, Saudi Arabia made a deal with the United States that if they gave all their terrorists, which they didn't want anyway, to the United States to fight in Afghanistan, the Americans afterwards would bring them to the U.S. and make them citizens and support them and, you know, give them homes, whatever. And what the CIA didn't realize, and the DIA and all of the intelligence agencies didn't realize, was that they were helping build Al-Qaeda. And Al-Qaeda was, there were little branches in, or one or two people in Missouri, in Mississippi, in Decatur, and at some point they all came together, highly financed by what they had made in Afghanistan from the intelligence agencies, and then further supported when they came to the United States.
Well, I want to point out there's a good deal about this in the book, as I made a reference to in the beginning. While the book is often cast as a love story, it is that. I think people may be pleasantly surprised by how much of this kind of substantial information is in the book. And we haven't mentioned the FBI, which Robert Morgenthau, has said repeatedly before, during, and since, that the FBI has a lot to answer for.
Yes. Yes. I don't think the World Trade Center bombing in 1993 would have happened, and I think that Al-Qaeda would have been identified and broken up had the FBI not sequestered 14 boxes that they found in the murderer, so the house of the murderer of Meir Kahane, the extremist rabbi from Israel. And the police and the FBI put out the story that this was a lone gunman, and they put it out very strongly, you know, almost surprisingly. And in actual fact, these 14 boxes show they had bomb materials, they had blueprints of the World Trade Center, they had tapes from Abdul Rahman, one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda, urging people to arm and to get bombs to destroy Americans' great World Trade Center.
Well, again, there's much about this in the book. Plus, there's so many stories. One of my favorite in the book, which is, I don't say, maybe 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way of the book, an occasion in which our district attorney, our being those of us in New York, Robert Morgenthau, did what one would have hoped the federal government would have done, and that is expose the laundering of money out of Iran to buy weapons, including the makings of weapons of mass destruction. The Iranians were laundering their money through a bank in Great Britain. And despite repeated efforts to get the federal government involved when they didn't, then Robert Morgenthau, our district attorney, moved on and exposed that whole case, and there's more about that in the book.
Remarkable, I did not know about the cover-up by the FBI of all these documents about Al-Qaeda and with Meir Kahane. My question is, what was their motivation for doing such an amazingly stupid thing? Furthermore, even though there's been no major attack, I mean, this one was predicted in advance by Reuters, London, et cetera. Do you think was significantly, based on your research, significantly safer now than we were before 9/11? I mean, is Homeland Security really effective? Are they communicating effectively and transparently with each other?
Well, the first part of the question is, if I understand it, is how did the FBI, how was it so stupid or so corrupt as to not identify the conspiracy? Well, they told Bob's office, that they didn't have an Arabic translator. Therefore, they couldn't translate the boxes. However, they wouldn't give them to Bob's office, which was prosecuting the case. So a little investigation on Bob's part and on my part showed that both the FBI and the CIA had a number of, as I said, informers, people that were keeping them apprised of what Al-Qaeda was doing, except that it turned out to be the whole of Al-Qaeda that was informing. So that was the reason, from what we understand, that the FBI and the CIA wanted to keep this terrorist conspiracy under wraps. Also, the CIA tried to stop Bob from investigating the BCCI case, the Bank of Credit and Commerce, also called the Bank of Crooks and Criminals International, because the CIA was paying these terrorist informants from the money laundered money in the bank that he was investigating, in BCCI. So that's part of your answer.